Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ancient Ways for Modern Days as we pick up in John chapter 9, and we pick up where we left off yesterday. If you remember the story up to this point, Jesus has healed a man who was born blind. And now this man has been kicked out of the synagogue. He's been removed from the Jewish community by the Jewish leaders that are arrogant, and then they're threatened by Jesus. And so what we find now is we find this incredibly, I think, tender scene where Jesus comes and finds the man. And so let's just turn to our text. Let's jump in and let's look at Jesus' care for this man. The world has turned its back on this man, but look at how Jesus has been faithful to him. It says, "And Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, 'Do you believe in the Son of Man?'" Now, this phrase, Son of Man, this is one of Jesus' favorite titles for himself. It's referring to his messiahship. It's referring to the idea of being the Christ, the anointed one. This is Jesus really, his self-identification. And the man responds, he answered. He says, "And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" What a great question. Jesus says, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" And the man says, "Well, I want to believe in him. Will you make sure I understand who he is?" And Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you." And he said, "Lord, I believe," and worshiped him. Now, I want you to key on a few things. First of all, Jesus, he makes it very clear that he is the Son of Man. He is the Messiah. He is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He is the long-awaited Redeemer of Israel. This is who he is. And so when the man, he asks, "Who is he that I might believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you." Now, this is incredible because Jesus says you have seen him. He's talking about something that, I don't know, a few hours ago, this man would never have been able to do. He's talking about this reality this man could not see, and now he can see, and he can take his eyes and he can lay his eyes upon Jesus Christ, the Son of Man, the Messiah, the divine God in the flesh. This is what Jesus says to him. And look finally at this man's response. He said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshiped him. This man, with this phrase, "Lord, I believe." In this moment, he makes the declaration that now, even though he's been kicked out by the Jews, even though he doesn't have a job, he clearly hasn't worked all these years, he's just been a beggar, a blind beggar, this man now has been healed. He doesn't know what the future holds, but he says, "I believe, I trust in you, Jesus. I trust that you are the Son of Man, that you are the Messiah." And then look at this man, look at the final thing it says. It says, "And he worshiped him." See, belief and worship, they go hand in hand, don't they? When this man trusts that Jesus is the Messiah, he ends up worshiping him. Now, listen, we are only to worship God. We are to only worship God. And in this moment, Jesus doesn't say, "Hey, don't worship me." This is what angels do. Every time someone encounters an angel and is tempted to worship the angel will say regularly, "Listen, I'm only a created being, also worship God." In this moment, Jesus, he does not rebuke the man for worshiping him. He receives this man's worship. What is all of this leading us to understand? This is leading us to understand in the very beginning, Jesus said, he says, "I am the light of the world." Jesus proved it by letting light shine into this man's eyes. This man now sees, not just physically, but spiritually. He sees what the Pharisees cannot see. And now this leads to this ultimate moment where this man now worships Jesus. It goes all the way back to John chapter 1. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things were made through him, and nothing came into being except through him. And in him was life, and the life was the light of men." This is who Christ is. Christ is the light of the world. Now, when we say we trust in Christ, this is meant to lead toward something. This is meant to lead toward worship. So for you, if you're listening to this today and you believe in Jesus, here's my question. Do you worship Jesus? Now, here, the worship is the idea of giving him the praise that he deserves. We worship Jesus when we are in a worship service. when the church gathers and we sing and we lift up our voices. But listen, you do the same thing when you listen to the sermon. That is a moment of worship as you give your attention, your heart, your soul, and your mind to learning of the Lord and honoring him. But you do the same thing when you're driving your car. You do the same thing when you're parenting your kids, or when you're listening to your parents, or when you're doing schoolwork, or when you're at work. All of your life is meant to be a reflection of this statement, Lord, I believe. Because I believe, my life now is orchestrated, it's organized around this chief important thing, honoring and worshiping Jesus. So if you are a Christian, if you have been redeemed, if you have trusted Christ in his death and resurrection, if you in fact believe, let me ask you, is there any part of your life whatsoever that does not worship Jesus? Where are the places where selfishness rules and self-worship reigns? Where are the places where you're led by your arrogance or your hate and anger or your lust or your laziness? Where are the places that you need to say, this is an area in my life where Jesus is going to be honored? This is our ancient way for our modern day. As those who have been, once were blind but now see. As those who now see, we now are those who believe. And when we believe, we worship the Lord. I want to encourage you to consider your life, to consider every aspect of your life. And I want to ask you to consider figuring out, going to the Lord, even prayerfully asking him, Lord, will you help me worship you in all of my life? This is our ancient way for our modern day.